guys, thanks for joining. Out on location, it's so good to be out. Tonight I'm going to be testing a new toy for something different for me. So got here straight after work, hoping to get some good foreground composition acquisition here, and only just made it. The nightfall is just so rapid at this time of year. It's just like half an hour, light's gone. So managed to get the last of dusk just to get a 3-row 8-panel wide panorama of this church and the leading line of the stairway, and hopefully going up on the opposite angle to the stairway will be the rising Milky Way core. And for that section I'll wait for dark to completely fall, which is probably going to be another hour or so, and I'll move about 100, maybe 150 metres up that way where there's a clear view to the east to capture that rising core. So just going to chill for a little bit, walk around, sort of scout the location a bit, and yeah, then we'll move on to the next component of the night, which is the fun bit and taking the Milky Way core. Now, just before we move on into this next segment of the video, just have a little bit of a confession to make. This is actually the second time I've been out trying to shoot this same video. First night I was out was perfectly clear sky, but it got very cold and very damp. So by the time I came around to taking the Milky Way photos, I had complete lens fog out, and I didn't have a lens warmer with me, so I had to pack it in for that night. So you probably will have noticed some of the slider shots and the time lapse look super clear, whereas some of the shots and even the sky behind me right now, there's clear evidence of quite a bit of cloud about. So rather than throw all that footage to waste, I thought I'd just chuck it in anyway. So the new toy. I have very generously provided to me by Move Shoot Move is their new-ish, well, it's been around for a while, but it's new to me, is their newish Nomad star tracker. So probably the first thing you really notice when you pick up the Move Shoot Move Nomad for the first time is just how tiny this thing is. It is ridiculously small, even compared to the original Move Shoot Move Rotator. It is a good step forward in compactness, and compared to the Skywatcher Mini, it looks dwarven really, even though the Skywatcher is by no means a big mount. Other things that immediately popped out to me were the integrated Arca Swiss head plate rather. So this is extremely important for getting good polar alignment for your mount. So when you're manually putting on a plate, no matter your mounting system, on the Move Shoot Move in particular, the Rotator, if it is skewed at all to the left or right, then that's going to knock out your polar alignment. nothing more to worry about now with the Nomad, as it's all integrated. And I think Move Shoot Move even have adapter plates, so you can adapt the Nomad to Vixen style plates if you want to use it on a Skywatcher Equatorial mount or anything like that. The other thing that immediately comes to my attention, and something, my biggest bugbear, and ultimately why I moved off the original Move Shoot Move rotator, is they have completely rejigged the mount. So it's got an extruding gear out the front with good sized teeth on it, and corresponding to that is a mounting plate with teeth on it as well, so it meshes in real tight. No way you're going to move that around. And then you've got a ring that you screw on, all looks like aluminium, and you screw that down, and there's no way that that is going to loosen. And even within the plate itself, there's a small grub screw that you can use to tighten in on the ball head or whatever you're mounting on top of your plate here onto the Nomad, so it's nice and secure. Other things, I guess, you notice once you look at the specs, and I've never been limited for what I use them for with the Skywatcher or the Move Shoot Move rotator, but it has got a slight increase in capacity at 3.5 kilos, which is great. And school is still out, I guess, on the switch being used. I love the simplicity though. It's either tracking in the southern hemisphere off or tracking in the northern hemisphere. There's no apps, no multiple buttons to worry about or to cycle through multiple modes. It's either tracking in one of the hemispheres or it's off, which I think is great for simplicity, because I think, and this is coming from me as probably someone who buries himself in gadgets more than that's ever required, but it is good to have that level of simplicity. So when I got this Nomad, it was, I'd shot it for a few nights, and I had been typically using a Benro 3-way geared head for either my Skywatcher or my Move Shoot Move. And to be honest, this thing just looked a bit like a toy on top of it. So I'd long wondered about the Move Shoot Move Equatorial Wedge. So it's kind of my first impressions of this as well. So I ended up lashing out and buying that, and as you can see here, it just looks like the perfect combination of alignment tool, being the wedge, and tracker, being the Nomad. So it is definitely a little bit different. There's a lot more slack in this Move Shoot Move Equatorial Wedge than the only other ones I've got to compare it to are the Skywatcher and the William Optics Equatorial Wedge. Like, there's near zero slack in those, whereas you do have to sort of use a technique with the Move Shoot Move where you set the payload back on the gear and then you wind it forward to your declination, so that the gear is always weighted, and then you can lock it down. First couple of nights I used it, when I was locking it down, I was finding it was just moving my polar alignment out a little bit. However, yeah, just, perhaps don't try and learn how to use a new tool in the dark is something I could probably be a lesson I could take away from that. But yeah, now that I've gotten my head around it, it does seem perfectly matched to the Nomad. So the ultimate aim of tonight was to use the Nomad tracker here to use a couple of different focal lengths to capture the rising Milky Way in the eastern sky. However, as you've probably seen from a couple of the time lapse I've put up, the predicted majority clear sky of early tonight, it's due to get probably rain like we've had the last two nights. later in the night. It just hasn't eventuated to a level where I think I'll be doing the Nomad justice. So I think what we'll do here is we'll probably pack this gear up now, and then we'll go out and capture the night sky at a later date, and perhaps just take the interlude to have a bit of a closer look at these three trackers, which really do sort of encompass the popular market for what's available for compact trackers. So in true fashion for me, I've managed to get about halfway home, and I've looked out the window and gosh, there's a few stars up there. So I've pulled over, turned the lights off and let my eyes adjust a little bit. And sure enough, there's still a lot of cloud, but none of it seems to be obstructing the Milky Way at the moment. So I've pulled down a little side road, and I'm just going to get these sky images captured. I'm just going to use a 35mm just to get it done, just so I can have something to assess and show you what the Nomad is capable of on top of the MSM Equatorial Wedge. I'll leave the closer examination in comparison to the Skywatcher Star Adventurer Mini and the MSM Rotator to the Nomad tomorrow, perhaps in the light of day, once I've had a bit of a sleep and I've managed to actually bag the shots. So before I get set up, I've got my little sky quality meter here. So I'll find out which end is the right end because it's dark. I'll point it to the sky. It's coming up with 21.29 as the sky quality, which I think is right on Bortle 3, I think, but I'll put it up on the screen anyway. But anyway, I'll get to it. I'll get this thing aligned and get these sky captures done. I'll just leave a bit of a time lapse going of me getting set up. Well, that's a wrap for me tonight. About halfway through that sequence, I think, because the Milky Way had gotten so high in the sky, I decided I usually take panoramas in a portrait mode, but however, because the A7R2 screen only articulates upward, not side to side, I decided to do it in landscape mode because the Milky Way was so high. To be able to see the screen, that was the only way it was going to work. About halfway through that sequence, yeah, could really feel the temperature just drop out. So much so, and the fog roll in. When the tally lamp was flashing just before the exposure, I could see in the viewfinder, in the screen on the back of the camera, I could see the tally lamp bouncing colour bouncing off the moisture in the air. Oh, it's gotten real cold, and yeah, I could see on the back of the screen, like the last row or two, there was quite a bit of high level cloud starting to come over. But the first few rows, I think, I had a good look into the corners. They looked pretty pinpoint. Exposure at 30 seconds, which is the longest the internal exposure will do on these Sony cameras. Taking it ISO 800, wide open at f1.4. There's a little bit of aberration at being wide open, but the GMAS is generally pretty good. I was just trying to get in as much light as I could, because just like me, I forgot to bring my intervalometer, so I could not go beyond that 30-second mark. We will see how we go, because I'm just, it's occurring to me that I set up in a ploughed field, which means the ground is very soft. So I'm just hoping there hasn't been any ground movement throughout that sequence. That might knock alignment out a little bit. Anyway, that'll do it for me. Getting very, very tired and extremely cold, so I'm going to pack up here. The sky's fogged up regardless, so we'll get these images back on the computer, hopefully process. All right, we'll take a closer look at what they look like in the comfort of a warm office. So after the excitement of last night's impromptu mid-paddock capture, I've loaded up just a subset of the images I took. Now these are straight raw photos taken from the A7R2 I took them with. I'll just clear any processing that had been done to these, and we'll jump in and we'll take a look. So Milky Way core here, probably good as any to start with. We'll zoom in on the middle, 300% here, so probably more than what you'll practically ever do in a real life situation. Very pixel peeping kind of stuff, but that's what we're doing here. And you can see the stars are perfectly round. There's no indication of trailing at all, which is great. So we'll just pull out a little bit, go up into the top right, real quick look. Got some lens aberrations there, but the stars are not looking to appeared to be stretched from the effects of tracking error at all. And those aberrations are simply because I've got the Sony lens there, the 35mm G Master wide open at f1.4 at 30 seconds. So actually that's ISO 1250, whereas I think I took the rest at ISO 800. I must have bumped the dial, no matter. That's no consequence for what we're looking at here. So yeah, up in the left-hand corner now, you can see again, stars are looking pretty good. Perhaps a little bit elongated, but that may be due to other factors there. I don't think that is anything to do with tracking error. You can also see there's quite a bit of vignette. We might have a look at a non-Milky Way orientated photo next, just to see how that pans out when there's not such a bright object in the center, just to see if it flattens out a bit. Again, fairly common stuff, sort of slightly elongated away from the center of the lens, the center of the image, which to me would indicate that that is a lens aberration, nothing to do with tracking. If it was going to be a tracking error, all the trailing would be in a common direction. So looking down in the right here, zoomed right in, 200%, 300, and again, stars are looking pretty good. No evidence of trailing there at all. So we'll go back out. We'll have a look for if I can find anything without Milky Way in it. This one up here is about the closest. Jump in and have a look at that. You can still see there's a little bit of vignette, and that's just me having the lens wide open, because I was just trying to belt this one out and get as many images captured, so I got as much data to put a sky panorama together as I could. So we'll go back into the center. Yeah, they're looking really nice and round. No trailing on those stars at all. And again, here you can see lens aberrations, but as far as trailing, yeah, rock solid. Yep, bottom right, same again, no trailing errors. So, and again, down in the left there, you can see more aberrations, but nothing in the way of lens, star trailing rather. So we'll try and have a look at a photo that might be on a different, that was early on, going on the file name. So I'll try this bottom one with the plane trail through it. So that was taken a little bit later in the night. So the camera would have been at a different angle. So looking here, because I would have been panning the camera up and down on its ball head, whether I may have shown any evidence of knocking them out, or whether the moved payload has perhaps caused any sort of shift in weight that might have contributed to tracking error. So we're just looking for any scenario that might cause tracking error to introduce itself. And here, yeah, they're looking pretty spectacular. Yeah, nothing to report there as far as tracking errors. That the Nomad's doing a fantastic job. Up in the right, yeah, great stuff again. I mean, obviously the A7R2 plus the Sony G Master 35mm, light mirrorless camera plus very light mirrorless lens. It's certainly not going to be pushing the payload limit of the Nomad. But yeah, regardless, yeah, excellent results, because that's a combination I use on the regular. It's probably these days my most used camera and lens combination on a top of a tracker. So here, yeah, bottom right, absolutely clear, and bottom left, yeah, absolutely perfectly round stars. In terms of tracking, not so much in aberration. So all in all, really impressed with the Nomad tracker. It's done really well. I've taken, well, this is just a subset of all the images you can see through the top there. I've probably taken that many again, and none of them from my inspection and the inspection we've just done here show any sort of tracking error. So no trailing of stars, and that's at 30 seconds. And ultimately, with star trackers of this sort, you're not really looking to track beyond about 2 minutes anyway. I typically, if I've got an intervalometer with me, I'll remember one of them one day. I'm never really shooting at longer than 1 minute, and more often than not, I just shoot at 30 seconds anyway, because I find once you're stitching them into a panorama, it's generally, you've got enough data anyway, because you can see the histogram. The signal spike there is well off the left, so it's well off getting no signal, the noise floor there on the left hand side. So I'll hand back to Future Dom now, and we'll go through the remaining comparison to the Skywatcher Mini and the original MSM, and we'll also take a closer look at the MSM Equatorial Wedge. So a great night out last night with the Nomad here. Did really well. 30 seconds, no visible trailing, as you would have already seen. So you may also see behind me, it is now completely grey and raining. So extremely fortunate to have gotten a good little window of time last night to get, some sky photography in. So we'll just start off going through these trackers just to see the pros and cons in my view, and perhaps use that as some way of communicating who they might be for. So with the Move Shoot Move, which is my the Rotator, which was my original tracker, it's just got a 2-button operation. One is on off and selects the hemisphere, so northern or southern hemisphere tracking, and the other button selects your function, so whether you're on star tracking, half tracking, or one of the rotator modes. And that's probably the one major advantage this little thing has over the other two here, is that it is also a rotator, so mounted on top of your tripod like this, and you get a little shutter sync cable that comes off the top of your hot shoe mic on your camera, and every time your camera takes a photo, it'll increment the rotation of the device at just minute amounts. So I don't use it for that anymore, although I used it only for that when I first got it. Probably the two major well, one not so much major, but two notable disadvantages of the Move Shoot Move rotator is here you can see that the mount on top of the rotator, it's just a double-ended little bolt, and when you've got, you know, up to a couple of $1,000s worth of camera and lens on top of your rotator, that's a bit of a nervous moment right there. Should it come undone, which we've discussed earlier and in my review of this unit. So that is clearly the biggest downfall of this, although there are methods of modification in which you can overcome this. So it doesn't mean that this is no good, it just means you might have to get a bit handy with a drill or some glue to overcome the limitations. The other issue, or the other problem with this mount, I would say, or drawback, is that it's just got a single screw Arcus quarter 20 mounting hole, or it might be 3/8 actually, I can't remember now. But there's only one mounting hole, or screw hole, which means when you put your Arcus Swiss plate on, you have to be really careful with its alignment to make sure that where you're pointing it is in line with not only the unit but also your equatorial wedge, if you're using an equatorial wedge, because any difference there can impact your polar alignment. But also you've got to make sure it's screwed down really tight, because if it comes loose, similar problem to the mounting bolt here, if it becomes loose and starts skewing left or right, it will certainly impact your polar alignment at least, but at worst could also drop everything and tip your tripod over, which is definitely not. So all in all, it's a great tracker, still a great tracker, even though it's quite a few years old now. I don't think MSM sell it anymore. I'll have to check that out. But if you're looking to get a compact tracker and you find one of these used, as long as you verify it's working okay, yeah, I would still not hesitate to grab it. Now the second tracker I've got here is the Star Watcher Mini. Oops, I didn't realise I hadn't locked that down. So advantages for this one is, I do, even more so than the Nomad, I like the fact that it's got although it is Vixen plate at the top, I do like the fact that it's got a really simple and robust, like very robust mounting mechanism, and it's, yeah, you just no way that's going to rotate, and it's extremely simple. It's just one little hand bolt here with a large gear so that it's easy to grab onto, large handle, and then you're done. And then you've got your ball head adapter plate here that goes on the front. Other advantage of this, if you're inclined to use a just take that off again, polar scope, it is probably the better of the three, because you can put a proper polar scope into this unit that looks straight up the barrel of the unit, which makes it very, very accurate. Now I know a few photographers do use the polar scope, but in the Southern Hemisphere I just don't think it's worth it. It's just a pain in my view, but for accuracy it is definitely something you want to look into. Now, be it a pro or con, this has removable. This is the only unit to have removable batteries. I think it's a pro, honestly, because if you're out in the field and you have forgotten to charge stuff, as long as you have a couple of AA batteries, you're good to go again. And also you can
power delivery via USB, I believe, although I don't think I've ever used it for that. Probably the biggest reason I got the SAM here was for the inbuilt intervalometer, and this is actually a little Wi-Fi unit built inside as well, so I can connect to this unit with an app and control, set up multiple different runs, so set 30-second, 1 minute runs, and just set them all to go, and just I'll go on and do something else, go have a nice cup of warm tea or something like that. But it is also its Achilles heel in that there are no, apart from the physical power on button here, there's no other buttons to control function, which is my biggest bugbear with this thing. So if you don't have a phone, or you don't have a Android or Apple device to connect to this while you're out in the field, and it's your first trip, you haven't set it up, it's a paperweight. It will not function without the app. So what I did with this one is, with the shortcomings of the MSM, there's always a way. I connected to it and I just set up a tracking run and set it to auto start on power on. So by default, when you turn this on, it doesn't do anything. It just becomes ready to connect to. But by setting that auto run task, as soon as I turn it on, it's tracking for the southern hemisphere. So as long as you're conscious of that, it's not a huge disadvantage. But if you don't know about it and you take the unit straight out one night when you first get it, you're going to have not a very good time. Probably the advantage of this unit is that it's got two screw holes underneath for which you can mount, so it's very robust, and I know it's not going to come undone on me, and it's also in very good alignment with the actual tracker itself. Now we'll get to the MSM. Now, you may have seen me in the video last night having a bit of a struggle with this thread system. So I don't think it's entirely perfect, but it is an enormous improvement on here. As I said, as I mentioned in the video yesterday, it's got that extruding gear with gears on it, and the mounting plate, if I can get it to focus, is that. So they will mesh together, and then the tightening ring goes down over the top. Now, easy in the daytime. I was struggling when I was out in the dark and cold last night. But anyway, it is a lot better than the former system, and honestly, I think I'll get a couple of these plates so I can have one permanently attached to my Allen Willis V bracket that I use to mount my payload on, and also one permanently attached to my alignment gear. So I'm not going to cover the alignment process really in this video. I'll probably do that later down the track, but yeah, it aligns the same way as all methods that I use for any of these other ones would work for this. So as mentioned, I don't actually have them here. I'm not sure where I've put them, but the rear, well, just in regards to that alignment function, it's got this little rear screw here which you can attach the plate that is then used to mount the poloscope, laser, and phone mount that come off the back. Now, I don't use it. I find that altogether too fiddly for when you're out in the field, so I'm using the Richard Taddy method of the Skylab's plastic phone tray, and yeah, that they've got a Nomad mount option already in their lineup, so I just grabbed that and it worked a treat. And apart from only having one mounting base and having to screw one off the Alan Wallace V plate and then putting it onto the Skylab's phone mount and back again, that worked perfectly. So yeah, no complaints there. So USB-C charging port, as the same as with the original MSM. Actually, I should have pointed this out in the Skywatcher Mini. It's only micro USB, so it would be nice to have consistency among USB interfaces, but alas, we don't. Probably the only other thing to mention now for the Nomad is the little switch I was mentioning yesterday, and hopefully that's coming to focus. But yeah, it's just a little flat switch, which means it's not going to get bumped, and it's certainly not going to move without a deliberate action on it. But I'm just not sure how durable it's going to be. But at the moment, yeah, I can't complain at all. So just with all of that stuff, just because of the grub screw and the mounting mechanism, I would say one good thing to get yourself is something like this Ulanzi tool. Just throw it in your bag. It's got a large flat blade for doing mounting screws, a couple of really small like Allen key style fittings that you can use with the little grub screw to fasten up your payload. So I'd actually never really used this before the Nomad, but now it's sticking in my bag. So it's if you're going to go the Nomad, I would definitely advise one of these little things, and you can find those on eBay or wherever. They're not too much. Now, just quickly, this tiny little thing, and I probably should have gotten my Williams Optics Equatorial Wedge just to show you the size difference. Like, this thing is so small, this thing, and you can see why it's perfect companion for the Nomad. So it's got this big lockdown arm for your declination here, which is very important to the process, I've found. So I've found, I don't know if you can see that now that I've taken the tension off this, hang on, get this undone properly. It's got quite a bit of slack in the declination when it's not tightened down. So the trick I've been using is, once you get your Nomad in, and this is just pretending like this is aligned and on your top of your tripod, you can see there's quite a bit of slack when that's not tightened down. So what I've found is to make sure it's sitting back in its seat, so that when you wind forward to your declination to match your latitude, it's resting back on the gear, so the gear is pushing it up towards your setting. And just before you get there, I just put a little bit of tension on the tightening arm here for your declination, so that sort of takes incidental wobble out of it. And then once you get it all locked in, then just very gently tighten this quite firmly. Make sure you brace the unit at another spot so you don't tip everything over, but you do want that quite firm. Otherwise, refocusing or reframing your camera, or even putting your camera on, or changing any sort of loading on top of it, could cause it to lose alignment. And you might incorrectly attribute that to your Nomad, where it's just that little bit of slack. So you just got to be conscious. But all in all, a great little pairing. So just want to quickly thank Move for sending me this Nomad unit. It's do I recommend it? Absolutely. It's not to discount these other two, but particularly I'm about to go on a 3-month trip around Australia with my family, and I had been trying to decide, just because weight and bulk are very big considerations for this trip. I was trying to decide which one of these two to take, and now it's going to be this one. So I'll be traveling around Northern Territory, Western Australia, South Australia with my family. So it won't be a photography trip. So I will be off air essentially for the next 3 months, but hopefully I get a handful of nights out to photograph some of the wonderful places I'll be at, and sensationally border one dark skies. So that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in, as always. Any questions, comments, thoughts, post them down below. If you're more than a couple of days from the date of posting this video, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just completely out of phone reception. So I'm definitely going to be off grid. So I'll get to you when I can. So thanks for tuning in, and hopefully you've got clear skies wherever you are, unlike me. Thanks again for watching.